Shop of Maniacs. You're listening to another analog episode of the Shop Talk Show. I'm Dave, and with me is Chris. Hey, take it away, Chris. Lazy John, man, that's great. I was gonna try to sing over it. You know, I don't know the words of that song, but I was gonna mix them up, and it was gonna be like, I went down to the river and drank a bottle of wine or something. You know, just just kind of like.
And then make the blog post ridiculously long. I feel like once every 6 months, you should do like the blog post where the entire paragraph is in the title field. You know, I think that's fun.
That's good. That should be. I do have one.
You can't do it too much because people will just unsubscribe, but it's just a little eye catcher. You know, it's like if you could make the title orange. Well, you can't, but you can do this.
I have a post I'm working on. Been working on it for months. It's called MDX with web components, and it. The post is. I'll read it to you here. Just use regular Markdown.
Because Markdown supports HTML and web components are HTML, so why the hell do you need MDX is the point?
Yeah. Basically, yeah. You don't need all that junk. You just script tag and go. So there you go.
I always was surprised by it because part of me is like, oh my God, some people that really lean into MDX hard, and I'm thinking of, what's his name? Josh Komau.
Yeah.
Great. This blog is amazing. And he puts all these incredible interactive demos inside of it, and it feels like React. It feels like Josh made a little React component with all its little use states and sliders and, you know, makes a little interactive thing, and then he gets a chance to slot it into a blog post because MDX. Doesn't have to be. You could have done that same thing with a web component, you know.
Yeah.
A little isolated interactive component, works anywhere, yada yada.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a place to bind some interactivity, you know. And anyway, it's just a silly little joke. So.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Hey, let's make blogs weird again. You know, just post weird things.
Yeah.
Your thesis on chips. So whatever you got going on.
You know, there's so much change in CSS. Just to change the subject just a tiny little bit. You see it asked a lot, you know, like every other month you hear Jen Simmons asking around, so correctly, as her job is, asking for feedback. I'm like, now what's next, you know? She's always like, this is what we shipped, look at all this amazing stuff. What next? What do you want to see? What do you want to see? What do you want to see? I feel like she's constantly building and refining lists of what real world web designers want, you know, and you see that from Google folks too. We got it from Adam the other day, like, okay, what do you want? What kind of UI do we help build better, and that kind of thing. Happy to chime in with what's ever on my mind, you know, just only because we tend to get it, so like it's usually worth a little brain power in saying it, because, you know, the last few years it's like, wow, ask and you shall receive, huh? One of the ones I mentioned the last time he asked, it occurred to me, I can't remember why exactly, but they were on my mind again, is regions. There was a weird little period in CSS history where Adobe was when they were doing kind of web standard C work. Seems like more than they do now. I don't know if that's fair or not, but they had a little period in Adobe's life where they were a little hot and heavy with being involved with standards and browsers and stuff. And it made sense that Adobe was working on it, because think of a tool like Adobe InDesign, which is famous for doing something like a book layout, multi-page thing. If you're gonna, you know, the printing world lives in this. Oh, I'm gonna do a 16-page, you know, printed, full-color, foldable, saddle stitch thing about health insurance, and I'm gonna mail it out to, you know, people between 60 and 70 years old, or, you know, whatever. That was the world I lived in for a long time. There's only one piece of software left anymore that people do that in, and it's Adobe InDesign, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's entirely fair. You know, Quark lived in that world for a long time. It might still exist. Probably not. Sure, yeah. But there's a fundamental thing that's built into software like that is flow. I can make a text box anywhere the heck I want and make another text box totally somewhere else in a document on a different page. It has the concept of pages. And I can just draw a line between them and say, when the text leaves that one box, go flow into this other box. It's just seemingly not even a difficult thing for that piece of software to do. They just wrote the software to do that. Makes perfect sense. Of course, when you're laying out a book, if you edit a paragraph on page 3, it pushes the flow of the book further. It might even make another page if it needs to. It's just a very natural, normal thing to do when setting something like a book or a brochure or anything like that. And that's what Adobe was working on, is they crafted up some CSS properties and values that said, hey, this element, when it overflows, flow into this other element. That was back even before we had CSS Grid. I think it was being thought about in terms of CSS Grid even then, but it didn't have to be. It wasn't a prerequisite.
Yeah, I want to 2011-ish is where I'm putting it.
Oh gosh, was it that long ago? Wow. Even then, though, but now that we have CSS Grid, now it makes a lot more sense. Like, or at least some more sense to me. Like, this grid area should flow to this other grid area, even if it's as simple as, a left side and a right side, like a book would be. So I thought it had legs then. I was sad about it the whole time it was gone. I don't think anybody's working on it, but it's on my little list as far as things I'd like to see CSS do. I'm sure it's very complicated. I have no doubt that this is no small task, although probably smaller in scope than, say, container queries, which we got. So, maybe all that will kind of happen. But then it got me thinking about, okay, well, what do people do when they want to put a book online then now? And I think about it as let's say in my future someday I decide to write a book. I'm going to do it on the web because I'm a web guy and I like the idea of, writing in Markdown or something. And then, but I also like the idea of a page. Why can't I make a page, say, 50, on a desktop anyway, 50 viewport units wide, because I'm trying to limit the line length, a single column kind of thing. But then have a top and a bottom to the page, not just infinite flow like an article, but I'm looking at a page, and then I can scroll down, and then there's another page. I want a white box, and then a little divide, and then another white box. I want the flow to go from the white box on top to the white box on the bottom. There's really no way to do that. There's no way to say flow from this box to that box. I just think that would be kind of nice.
Because if you had just a grid column interrupted by decorators or whatever you want to do, it'd be cool if content could just flow to the next box rather than you wrapping another div to explicitly chuck in a thing.
Yeah.
You could create a vertical rhythm that you couldn't otherwise, I always wanted it for ads, push ads to a different place. In this viewport, the ad block is only, 1,000 pixels, or 200 pixels tall. So if your content's more than that, let's just push it down. You get pushed to the next block or whatever,
Right.
I had a bunch of ideas at the time. I feel like it got killed. I was going to post an article. But do you remember the list of part article by Hakim Lee, one of the guys who made CSS? He said CSS regions considered harmful in 2014.
Oh, I remember.
I did not like his post, and I was very mad. I think I made some enemies. I was very disrespectful to one of the guys who made CSS.
Me too.
Opera had a competing spec. I think he was at Opera, right? CTO of Opera. Opera had a competing spec for page content, basically. You basically would say or CSS multi-column, but they had the thing where you could be this is page 2, this is page 3. I was why are we advocating for a thing that doesn't exist? when regions is in a browser, you could use it in I guess WebKit was probably where it was used, or when Chrome was on WebKit probably. But like we had like a prototype of it, and then it just got shot down, and it was just like, man, we were so close to having it, you know? Like I don't know. You could just say like, here's a content brick, and here's a ad brick, and now you just go figure it out. Website, like that would be cool, right? So, but they didn't have it. So that post kind of cut the sales. I feel like that was I don't know.
It did, you know, and I'll admit, maybe dude was right. I don't know. I can't, you can't A/B test the past. So.
Yeah.
But still, I want it now. I want it 10 years later. Interesting when I put a GitHub repo here too, a little piece of tech from Robin Sloan, great author. I really like Robin. He wrote this wonderful book, Mr. Penumbra's Midnight Bookstore.
24-hour bookshop. Yeah.
24-hour bookshop. Yeah, and then wrote another book in that universe, has written other books, makes olive oil. I don't know, I feel like I've given this intro a number of times, but he just gives off good vibes to me. And a little bit of a coder as well. I just think, how fun is that to read a book from somebody that actually knows technology, like, and writes it and publishes it and has open source repos. I think that's cool. Anyway, has this demo one called Perfect Edition that's like, hey, let's say you were going to publish a book on the web. Wouldn't it be nice to start with somebody who's thought about this to some degree? And the approach that Robin took with this GitHub repo called Perfect Edition, again, we'll link it up, is to use the multi-column CSS layout. So rather, because that does have kind of like rectangle to rectangle flow, but horizontally not any other way. And so you can kind of just say columns auto, and it will just make as many columns. It'll make 5,000 columns if it needs to, whatever. As long as there's enough width there to handle it. So there's probably a little JavaScript or something that helps us with. I don't even know. Maybe it doesn't. And then all this thing does is like find like the space bar and clicks and stuff to shift the page over. And kind of like gray out the edges of the column that you're not viewing right now. So it's pretty lightweight and a pretty kind of a cool looking way to present a book. That's the kind of thing I'm interested in. If you write a book, I just kind of feel like the presentation of it should look book-like. You should have like a design opportunity to make it feel a little different than you're just like reading a long blog post.
Right, yeah. I agree with you. I don't know. Adactio does some books, right? Resilient web design.
Oh, that's
like
right.
That. Yeah. It would be nice if you had a little more, style control, or a little more book-like vibe than just a long column of text, When
I thought I'd do it. This all barely qualifies as a book, but I wanted to do something related to CSS tricks. So at one point I did like the greatest CSS tricks, and I called it Volume 1 for CSS tricks, thinking I'd do multiple versions of them over time. It ended up just being a little bit more blog post-like, I just grouped up the best ones, gave it a little bit of a unique design, but never really solved how to present each chapter uniquely. I was overall pleased with it though, especially the writing process. I just really like writing the tools that I already know, rather than having to write in Markdown, which I don't do very often, or write in InDesign or something like that. Anyway, resilient web design, we should link that up too. Pretty cool. Our another friend of the show, Matt Marquis, his JavaScript for Web Designers book for A Book Apart was recently published on the web as well, and does have a very kind of cool book-like feel to it. But does just do this long single column down the middle feel. Miraculously typeset pretty much exactly like the book is.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Which makes me wonder, did they set it on the web and then convert it to print, or did somebody set it for print and then replicated it pretty darn nicely on the web? But it looks great.
Yeah, no, it looks wonderful. Yeah, the phone content isn't bad, you know, especially if you're like reading on an iPad or whatever, you know. I could also see like, oh, I refreshed or whatever, close the browser, and now I'm back at the top. Where was I? You know, I have to scroll down.
That's the thing, yeah. What do you keep the tab open or what? Not that like regions helps with that necessarily, but
yeah,
it's just stuck in my mind that like to design a page feels so nice. I want that somehow in a way.
Yeah.
We should shout out Mr. Ethan has a new book.
Ethan has a new book.
You deserve a tech union. Congratulations, buddy. I'm sure that was a big journey. You know, Ethan, of course, known for the invention of responsive web design, wrote a couple books and lots, and has spoken endlessly on that subject. Now, doing something very different and talking about, you know, the industry and the labor movement and stuff. It's just super different. So I imagine that's tough.
Yeah, I just started reading this weekend. I mean, so far so good. So it's interesting. I'd love to have him on here and talk to him about it because it's this weird like tangential thing, like where, you know, obviously most places don't have a union and they build websites just fine, but like, what would it be like if more places had it, you know? Like, and that's something interesting to think about, you know, would it be more ethical, more equitable, more, you know, like, you know, and is that the right move for the industry? I don't know, you know, I'm sure people have predispositions, politically charged predispositions, so I am lucky to sit right in the middle, so, and I live in a state that, like, won't let you have one, or it says right to work state.
I'm pretty middling too. My dad was a union boss. He was a union president of his local for a while, which predisposes me to thinking that is all a good idea. I fought for people's jobs. It was a very big deal to him and his life. Yeah, but sometimes I run this small business, and I'm not opposed to it. I don't feel like particularly attached to all that. You know, like are my 4 employees that are in the union? I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think about like the SAG-AFTRA thing going on, a WGA Writers Guild thing going on. You know, we're in a weird state where like movie, TV production's been paused. We're just gonna have this really weird dearth of movies. Even like when it starts like cycling back up again, it's gonna take a while. You know, like. There's not going to be new content until like 2024, you know? So
yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, though. Does it just mean that YouTube is going to kick ass, though? Or that there'll be a lot better podcasts or something?
No Island or whatever's going to come out. Reality shows kind of fill the gap, you know? So I think like it'll be, or there's probably some stuff that's like half cooked, you know? They started on something and then had to shut down or whatever, you know? But anyway, but it's just interesting how, like, one of the points they're arguing about is, like, should AI be able to take my job, you know? Like, if I'm an extra in this thing, you don't just get to use my face in any movie you want, you know? Like, and so, but the, like, movie execs are like, you know, what would be cheap is not paying extra, you know? And I'm just like, dang, that's hard. Like business-wise, I'm like, yeah, randomly generated people is a lot easier than like sourcing humans to come show up and paychecks and SAG credits and stuff like that. But then it's also just like, if you're an actor and you're like, I did one movie and now I'm in 1,000 movies and I don't get paid for it. That stinks, you know? That's illegal. I don't know if that's wrong. So anyway, that's just weird what they're fighting over, and I don't know. I think it's good they're having the big fight about AI and all that, you know, accreditation. You know, their Silverman's fighting for like, you can't just use my voice and tone later. Like, I'm gonna sue you. So very interesting times we live in. But they wouldn't be able to do that without union, you know? Like, they would have to get everybody to get upset, you know? Like, hey, everyone sign this petition to say you're upset, you know? Movie stars are.
That's a very good point. And any leverage that they have now, and even now it's like a struggle to get it to work. man, if you didn't have that, which is about as strong an arm as you can possibly be, and it's still not, like, obviously working, great.
Yeah.
It would have never worked before.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have no tools in the tool chest to fight a higher up decision, you know? So,
yeah.
Very interesting.
So let's play. We have an audio one here. Great question asker. Cindy Declare here. I think we'll play it for the show.
Disclaimer, I'm a hobby developer who's worked mostly with React and Node.js and a little bit with Flask and Jinja. I'd love to hear your thoughts on component libraries like Reactive View versus templating languages like PHP, Rails, and Jinja/Flask. My sense is that they're very similar in that both are ways of expressing how to turn data into HTML and both have composition concepts. I get that component libraries update the DOM dynamically, whereas templating languages traditionally update the DOM through full-page refreshes. But is that the only real difference? I get the sense that component libraries also lean somewhat harder into the use many components and compose them together mindset, whereas that is present in templating languages but not as established. Or is that just my perception because I'm not that familiar with the templating language world? This came to mind for me again recently with the hype around Next 13 and React Server components. The Next 13 marketing is self-aware that they've sort of now recreated PHP or Rails, but with React as a templating language. However, even there, it feels like there's a bit of something of, we've been using React for so many years and we've only just recently realized that we could use it as a backend templating language because it's very similar. Finally, while on Next 13, their marketing had the, now Next 13 is just like PHP or Ruby feel. But here I felt like I should have leaned a little bit more into the, yes, it's a backend templating language now like Rails, but it still has the dynamic kind components and smooth page transitions by default of React and Next of old. Keen to hear your thoughts on all of this. Love the show. Cheers.
Can you do exactly what you can do in Vue in PHP? Aside from the DOM, like the live DOM stuff.
So I had to look it up as soon as that. So Jinja is a Python-based like templating language, and a Flask I think is a wrapper around that to make it, I guess, a little more, routing, adding features like that, redirects. So it's a bit of a meta framework around the templating system of Jinja. Is that okay?
Sure.
You all feel
like,
pretty good?
Yeah, like you can use nunjucks and then 11D as a wrapper around it to make it more useful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
And this is, it's kind of a mustachy style, syntax for Python. So,
Yeah, okay. So now you're going to build a website. You're going to build a website for book reviews. So you're going to have a template called book, and a book is going to have the photo and the review and the star rating and the publisher and the date published and all this kind of information about it. If you're going to write that in Vue, you're going to just make some choices about how to break that up into smaller components. You might have a book cover component. You might have a date component that does specific things for the date. I feel like you'd make some choices about how to break that up. And I think this is what Simi's wondering, and I've been long curious about the same questions. Like, do you make the same choices when you're doing it with a server-side only component thing? And I think you don't. And I don't know why exactly, but I've tried to think this way. Like, I think if you looked at the code for the friggin' Shop Talk Show website, which is WordPress, you'd see me trying to break the thing up into tiny reusable components. Like I have a folder that I just called like components, maybe, or parts. Sometimes I call it parts. And I try to make little PHP templates that I can then call. But unfortunately, not unfortunately, but a little bit unfortunately, like there's no like ESM for PHP. You just call an include statement. But the include statement doesn't give you the opportunity to pass in props, really. So you're like setting global variables and then calling the template and letting the global variables populate what happens in the template. That's changed a bit. I think there's answers to that, but it's just different. Like, because it doesn't give you quite the component ergonomics like you'd get in Vue, you end up just deciding to break it up differently.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like the sort of the addition of props, which exists in some things, like Jekyll includes can accept props, little known fact, but they're cool. Like, you know, if I have a star rating component for my book review, right? Ideally, I go star rating, and then I just pass in a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 4.5, and then the component figures it out. Whereas like in PHP or a big loop, like you're just gonna, it's almost like explicit versus implicit assignment. Like you're sort of like just saying like, hey, I expect this to be in the post loop, and so I'm just gonna call post, hope that shows up, you know, and so like, and whereas like in a JS component, you're more like, hey, no, the post is this post. Like I'm gonna send that whole thing down to you. Or more accurately, I'm just gonna send you the number 5 and you just show me what 5 stars is.
I think that's just better. I hate to say it, but it just is. I think that
well, it means you
world
can use your star rating outside of the post, you know? Like you can use it on your user rating or your comment, you know, rating.
Right.
And so like you're not like it dodges a variable naming, like all the variable naming is at that component level. So I think you architect it a little more differently. You get a little more usability.
Yeah. Because, you know, Ruby helped a little bit more because they were essentially started taking local, they even had a different name for it, but it's essentially a local variable that you pass to whatever their version of include is. It wasn't called include, partial. Yeah. A little bit better. Or, you know, you can write a function called show book or something, and show book would take parameters, but then you accept it in that you would just assume that it returns HTML, I guess. I don't feel like anybody did that, though.
Yeah, I mean, but that's essentially what the JavaScript's doing, is it creates a component that accepts these parameters and then renders out basically. So yeah, I mean, it's different, but it's the same sort of. It's like breaking up stuff into smaller chunks. Yes, that is it. But the component mentality sort of inverts the, what do they call it? The inversion of control. And you basically are just sort of like saying explicitly, this has 5 stars, 4.5 stars. You're not saying like, hey, just assume post is in this loop and render that out. So I don't know enough about Jinja or Flask to know if they cover that for you. Maybe they allow props and maybe it's exactly the same, but that would be the big distinction I think for me. So
yeah, I want to ask GitHub how many star-rating.php files are there on all of GitHub, and how many star-rating.js files are there on all of GitHub?
Yeah, there's probably a 1,000 to 1 or so. You know, yeah. Maybe
that's just a guess, but I feel the same way. But the JavaScript leans into that a little harder, and especially now that TypeScript and what you pass in can be typed and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, well this is fun to think about.
Yeah.
That's why I always thought that WordPress should lean into that harder. Like I want to build sites with components, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Hey, have you heard the good news about web components?
Yeah. All right, we need to do another web component.
Just get a flavor of components, but you can still write your PHP or whatever, your other stuff, all the same. So anyway, but even though I advocate for web components, I do still have questions. So anyway, maybe need somebody on the show.
All right. Well, good stuff. We got through many things.
Got through some questions. Hey, as usual, send us your questions, everybody, or your hot dramas. We appreciate that. We'll talk about that. If you got some spicy slugs we need to know about, please send those over. We enjoy those. And follow us on the X or the Mastodon. I really don't know anymore. And then join us over in the Discord. I just realized Twitter changed TweetDeck, which was how I tweeted out the Shop Talk stuff. So we might not be able to tweet anymore. Anyway, we'll figure that out as time goes on. But then, but join us in the Discord. That's where things are happening. Patreon.com/shoptalk. Yeah, say it.
Just at shoptalkshow.com.
Hey there, Company. You're listening to another CSS-powered episode of the Shop Talk Show. I'm Dave in the shed. Rupert with me is Chris in the boot courier. Hey, Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me on your show on this 580th edition of Shop Talk Show. It's my pleasure.
This is great.
Dave and I hung out earlier.
We did hang out. We hung out and we shared sneak peeks of the apps we're working on.
Yeah, you got to do that. Some of the people you think you know the best, it's like, do you actually know what they're working on? You should take the time to find out, because that's always a nice thing to do. But this is a guest episode, and like Dave alluded to, of course, it's going to be very heavily about CSS, because we have a CSS survey that's just about to drop a bunch of 2023 data on us. That's going to be great, and we have one of the people that was behind and helped with the survey this year, Hoi Jing Chen. Hi, Hoi Jing, how are you?
Hello, doing well. Good to see you.
Oh yes, good to see you too. Can't wait. So are you in Singapore at the moment?
Oh yeah.
Wonderful. I can see a fan blowing on you. Probably highly necessary there.
100%. The necessary 365 days of the year. Can't live without.
Yes. Not known for its cool fall weather.
Oh no, not at all.
No, but you are known for being a long-time CSS advocate. So we were just saying before the show, we were hanging out, that you're approaching your 10-year, surely longer than that, of being involved with the web and IT work and web work and all that. But 10 years of real, true gainful employment, I believe you put it. But a decade anniversary.
Yep, coming up soon.
That's great. You don't get a pin or anything, but you do get spicier opinions. Those are
for sure. I want to say I get spicier opinions, and then yet I also mellow out. So it's like an internal monologue that's like, I'm mad at this, and then you're like, oh, but I'm tired. So
you're wrong, but I'm not even going to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, to correct the situation, it's just not there. So
no.
I'm gonna let that one go.
Yeah, a lot more shruggy at this age.
Yeah. When you've been through a few, you can just say, no, I don't care. There's a current trend about web components that has their downsides. A couple people I've posted some them in some chats about web components, and I'm just like, let it roll. I mean, if people have problems, let's write them down. Let's collect some feedback. But I think for some people, they're just like, oh, I'm so mad. There's just one thing wrong with that post. And I'm like, I don't care.
It's a lot of energy to be so mad about something. Sometimes I think about it, I'm like, wow, you must really feel very strongly about this thing to expend energy on it. But good for you. That's what I think now.
Good job being mad.
I think I saw Nolan Lawson's follow-up post for you today. It was very nice. It was just like, web components are fine. You know what? They don't even need you. Enterprise has decided they're fine. So if you're not cool and want to whine about it, that's okay. Enterprise will be over here using them. So bye-bye. All right, so the relevant URL is stateofcss.com. Pretty nice URL there. And you were involved a little bit this year. Can you tell us what was it like putting the survey together? What were you thinking about? What was your role?
Yeah, so this State of CSS survey is running for this is the 5th year, and it's the brainchild of Dr. Greek, right? And he has reached out took both the help in recent years. Like last year was we were
Walking over like
like
that one was good.
basically I helped out with sort of like going through it. So what are these features that we want to feature this year? And like it's not like I'm some professional like survey UX developer person. So it was a lot of like I used to take the survey. I took the survey every year. I didn't really think too much about it other than like, wow, I wonder if other people know about this feature. But when you put it together, you're like, huh. There's like literally 500 features, right? So like, and of course, state of the CSS, state of CSS, it's like, do you want to include only the new one? But like, there's something new, like new in CSS land is not a definitive word because like, is new something that the browser just put in? Is new something that the spec just got written? Is new something that was around for 5 years but somehow just caught on? So new is not an easy metric to fill. So it was basically going through the list of what we had from last year, like do we keep this, do we drop this, and then like are there new ones that we want to add? And so we had some like, they're not hard and fast rules, we had some broad criteria. So it's like, if there should be any implementation, so it's not like, pie in the sky kind of situation, but then you also don't want, if there was something that was consistently like, more than 90% for a couple years, like, let's kind of drop that to safety stage now. So it was that one
box or something. You're like, we all know what that is. That's
we did drop that one because we're like, I think people have learned about the box. We kind of dropped that one. So it was, I found it really good exercise to go through like the whole list, etc. And then the one that I spent more time on was kind of the missing features and pain points part, because now that part kind of steers into survey design land, which is like not either of our expertise. But what we found from last year is that we gave people free form fields, and it was not easy trying to go through the data because you have to normalize the data and then you're gonna have funky answers. Somehow like Safari became a thing, like an actual category, like that's not a CSS? Okay, I know you're angry, it's fine. So this year we tried a different route. We tried like some pre-fill and then like so options. Like I think we did options. And then a free-form field, and I know because I read like 2 articles something. I read about how people tend to go for defaults, and I did at the back of my mind. I'm like, are we influencing people that these are the top 10 things that we should be thinking about? But on the other hand, I used to like draw stuff, like customize shoes and stuff, and personal experience is that when people give me a beat, it's much easier for me to like be creative and think about more new ideas versus like, no, just do whatever you want. That's like so hard. So I feel like this style of asking people, because it's not a feature is pretty black and white. You're like, what pain points in CSS or experience? Do you think there are missing features? I feel like providing we did research for like I'm getting full disclosure. So Chris, you wrote like a CSS wish list kind of thing, and I use that as reference. I'm like, let's see what all these top CSS folks wish they had. Like compile it down to 10 features and interview people on it. Because I thought that I wasn't expecting the result I was expecting based on that 10 that I put up, and I'm like, we can talk about this. Or can I reveal what it is now? I'll reveal what it is now. So like the top missing feature was actually animating the auto. Silence. Think about that.
Yeah, totally. Let's take that as number 1. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, wait, actually that makes sense. I myself have done it, and I have like, oh man, there's so many ways and all of them suck. Terrible.
They do. They all suck.
That's a good one. Just because if you've hit it, you've been bitten by it, and you've done terrible things to try to solve it, and it would be so great to just have, right? Like just give it to me.
You know, I almost am nervous about us not getting it now because View Transitions kind of does it. Like if you just remove something from the DOM, View Transitions can do the thing where it squishes it down to 0, essentially the missing gap, and you're like, that's kind of what I was trying to do anyway. So maybe the incentive is a little less to do it, but I still want it. Don't forget about it, because animating in is still hard.
And the fact that you talked about that, right, like view transition, it's a new feature that, like, if you think about it, it's also very interesting how the mindset ought to change now 10 years in, I say 10 years because that's my anniversary, it's that, like, browsers are really fast. And there were some big projects that happened, but we probably didn't expect them to happen, like that a Chromium rewrite. Like it was such a big project that I think at some point nobody thought anybody would rewrite anything at this point. Like Chromium did their rewrite, and then back then like Firefox was like, oh let's do this whole new server and let's use a whole new engine called Servo, and now this whole new Servo. So I feel like we didn't expect the browsers would get so good, and so the things that we use, like even like the spec authors and like some of the browser engines like, wow, really do that. Like the browser can't do that. And now we're like, oh actually,
There was a little follow-up from last week's show. Our friend of the show, Brian Cardell, chatted in with us in the Discord about, because we were whining about regions, speaking of CSS wish list, or I was anyway. Like, oh, that could be a cool thing that CSS does. I don't know if it made your list this year, but I'm kind of a fan of the idea of being able to flow content between arbitrary cells or grid regions or something. And Brian said, like, because of the... I think this is what he was saying. Sorry if I got it wrong, Brian. But we used to all these browser rewrites, like when that was happening and being talked about, that was pre some of these rewrites. Because of how CSS developed, it was actually easier now.
I'm playing better than this afternoon.
It was kind of a hard no before, but
the last couple of matches been bad thing about it.
And we highlighted this last year too. So even last year, right? It's starting. It's like people are starting like, oh wait, we need to revisit some of these.
And yourself, are you?
Because the browsers are different now, and so like has which is like the hot property. Let's say like 2023 is like the hot property, the has selector. It was something that was like almost being the hard no, and browsers came out, oh actually, hey, guess what?
Yeah. Wow.
So I won't say anything is possible, but I want to say that like some of these hard problems, like you said, Chris, are not maybe. And I think that's a good enough evolution to reach. Well, let's keep going on that thread.
I really like that idea.
Scuffed my all flip man.
Like you said, Firefox redid its whole engine. Chrome was like, we can't do subgrid. They still don't have subgrid as the day we're recording it, because they were like, oh, we have to redo the whole layout. Like some massive things have kind of happened, under the hood, and it's just incredible that everything. I don't know. Yeah, it's been this sudden like. I think we didn't all realize. Oh yeah, all the browsers had to stop for a while working on CSS, and now they can start doing stuff. It's very cool. So coloring is a big one for everybody too, to kind of stop and work on. So
yeah, as we speak, subgrid's just starting to land across all of them now, right? So that's a big one.
Chrome has. I'm not okay. Confession: I don't actually use the stable versions of browsers on my computer. I have many, and so sometimes like. I forget, and then I use this feature, and then my lovely colleagues who are not developers, this thing looks funny, and they're so cute about it because they think they did something wrong. I'm like, oh no, that's all on me. I'm sorry. So I did that for a personal favorite of mine. This year's personal favorite is it's text wrap balance. It's so benign. It's like such a tiny little thing, but I love it because I don't know your web developer experience. Through my career, the number of times I've had people, designers, content writers, like, hey, thinking, it'd be nice if, we could make that heading not awesome. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, at one breakpoint, there's going to be another breakpoint where it's an awesome what? But like, I'm like, okay, let's do that. And like, professional thing. Like, okay, and then like, I don't know how many lines of breakpointing, or like, oh, there's a max, do a max break, like all kinds of shit.
Yeah, sure.
And now they come up with tetra balance, bam, like browser use. Like I love seeing now that browsers are capable. Is that like browser, you do it. Like Chris, you were saying get other people to do the work for you. I'm like, get the browser to do it for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a pattern that started from Git, right? Because one of the stories around Git was like, you tell the browser how many columns you want, and then the browser will figure out how many columns it will give you. Because the browser knows best. The browser knows how much content there is, and it knows how much space it has. And so let the browser do it. Like start micromanaging your browser.
Yeah, that's like the handy valve thing, right? Be the browser's mentor.
And I like that concept, and I feel like gradually as well, kudos to the browser engineers who really like sat down and did all this amazing rewriting work. That now moving forward, we potentially can have more tell the browser to do stuff situation.
That's right.
I'm very excited, even though I don't sound excited. I'm so excited inside.
Have you seen that? I feel like it's going
Did
to show
you
up
not
to be text wrap balance on headers and text wrap pretty on paragraphs or something. I would just learn that the other day that the pretty value for it is actually just for the orphans. Or
Oh no.
It's actually quite complicated, and I feel like I'm pretty lucky because like I'm not a browser engineer, but like I am part of this WUC working group for Chinese language requirements because I do speak Chinese. And I always like having discussions with them because it's not web specific, right? It's just like Chinese layout for digital and stop it. But then it kind of reminds me again that, different languages do have different requirements for these typography specific. Yeah. So there's the reason why word break, even this text wrap is kind of like a line break property. It's because the algorithm behind it it used to be that browsers chose, like the reason why lines break the way they are today is because the browsers weren't good enough to do the smart algorithm. Like some software does, like the design software does it nicely, but the browsers don't, and take design to be and the browser does. My design software does it. And it was a performance thing. But again, back to the rewrite thing, they're revisiting this. They're like, this is a really good algorithm this time. And then they're like, there are other things, but some of my colleagues who are like involved, because I help out with translation and stuff, with the Chinese language thing, like they're legit in the publishing industry and everything. They're like, actually the algorithm looks weird on Chinese text, it makes it uglier, we need to talk about that. And so they're involved in the discussion as well. So I'm just very fascinated by all this discussion.
It makes it uglier. Oh no.
For certain languages, like right now it's a bit like Latin, bit heavy, and that's just how the internet works, right? That's just
right. My first learning of that was I was a young man then. I had this post on CSS Trace called Nth Everything, and it was one of my first like calls for something I wanted in CSS because we have nth. What do we have? Nth child, certainly, but there's some nth. And but there's some text-based nths too, isn't there? There's like the first letter anyway. You can do first letter in CSS, right? But you can't do like nth letter 2. You can't grab the second letter, right? You can't do nth word. You can't do nth line. there's all these things that you can't do F's of, even though we have F stuff. And I was like, I want this. In my ignorance, kind of. And some of the pushback was like, but what does that mean across languages? Like, what is nth letter in Chinese? Doesn't it has a little bit of different implications there? If it's a language where a letter or a character is kind of like a whole word, is that still what you want? No, maybe. So anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's complicated, especially across languages.
Exactly, and I feel like I'm very lucky that I grew up knowing multiple languages. Multiple languages that have completely different scripts.
I wasn't dodging you, right?
I want to say it's almost equivalent of someone who speaks English. I never speak. Like the structure of the script itself is so completely different that you're kind of like, you just think about it more than someone who only speaks Chinese, only speaks English, only speaks Spanish, for example. Because then it's not as top of mind, and that's why I think it's pretty cool that like the working groups and W3C CSS working group, they do actively think about this, and they are. I mean, they're not the most high-profile people, right? I bet some people still think the CSS working group are like a group of gremlins, like hiding under like underground cave.
Yeah,
like,
they're
doing
definitely
culture.
hooded, whatever it is.
A few of them are Miriam. But yes.
Yeah, but like it's really ordinary people and across different countries just trying to figure out how to move the web forward, and I feel it's especially important for the non-English ones, simply because like the web is so English heavy today to a point where there's some interesting questions that even like that group we have zero answers to, because there's no precedent, which is like the question of just UX. For example, like everything is right to left, right? And then there's some like JK, Chinese, Japanese, Korean layouts that are not that common, but still different. What do you do for like UX controls in those situations? Because they didn't
Like a date picker, you mean, or something like that?
Yeah, or media player. Like these are things that did not exist in the physical realm, right? But when the digital realm started, everything was left by default, right? So if you and like the other writing scripts caught up later, after a generation of folks learned how to use these UX controls that are, arguably there are no words on there, right? They're symbols, but they're used to. Like you start off left and you end on the right.
Yeah, the little thumb in the YouTube player goes from the left to the right. That's just how YouTube works.
Right. So then what happens? Like now, right?
You stick with that, or like
you flip it around.
because it's a little more. Yeah.
If you ask the average person on the street, you're not gonna get like a uniform answer. And so like, we can do it now. Do we wanna do it? Do we really?
I see.
Kind of
Yeah.
like, oh wow, it's.
Do you think it's coming to a head with the logical properties thing? Just as a quick story, I translated a website into Arabic and showed it to a friend who speaks Arabic, and they're like, yeah, it's fine. And then I'm like, is it fine though? There's all this stuff that's still on the left. And they're like, oh, I just meant the words were fine. And then I was like, oh, I'll take it a bit further and like use logical properties and have the stuff line up on the right like it should, and put the logo over there and stuff like that. They're like, yeah, that's obviously way better. But they just didn't expect it, because translated websites always suck, and they're like, yeah, that's about as good as it gets. Their initial response was, that's fine.
Yes, and that's one thing that I do think about from time to time. It's like, our non-majority users just used to settling. You know what I mean? And I'm like, wow, that's a little dark, but well, I mean, it is what it is, right? And so no, now that you mentioned, I have a bit of a segue. I don't know if that's how you use it, but I'm left-handed. And I use my phone on the left hand. And when I message people, and I don't have the largest hand, right? My thumb, like, struggles to reach all the way across the phone to smash the end, like the standing key or the enter key. And then I was like, wow, I wish there was some way for me to just flip the interaction stuff over to the left. And I went down a bit of a rabbit hole to see like, are there any left-handed concessions? I use an Android, and the closest I got was like on one hand mode, you can make the keyboard smaller and then like kind of nudge it to the left or the right. But I want the enter key next to my thumb. And then I realized that if you hack into the developer option, you can force right to left. And then it's fun. And then it's fun to see which apps respect it and which apps don't. Because like, I want to see, for example, in Telegram or like the what is formerly known as the Bird app. Like Telegram, I think, if I remember correctly,
I messed up my
Telegram
comedy
didn't
there.
do the key over, but like some of the other apps did. So I'm like, oh, this must be like on the application level, you gotta do something. Because I'm sure like on the web, you can CSS it such that it respects the RTL, but then I'm like, this is a very specific mobile issue, which means it's kind of like a native app issue.
Yeah.
But all in all, it was really fun. Even if you force right to left, if you like for some apps, the icon, so like the home icon went to the right, when it's normal and left, and so on and so forth. Like some of the interface stuff also flipped, and some didn't, some just flipped the text. And I'm like, wow, this must be. I wonder if like they just like set
Some
that.
native apps have some flow, some aspect of flow, like the one that.
And but like if I haven't had experience, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if like the native Arabic speakers, I don't know, is that the type of experience that they get? Like it's like some stuff is there, some stuff is not. As long as I can use the text, it's fine, kind of situation. So it was like, oh, it was interesting to try. I tried it for a day, and then I feel like it's too messy.
Oh, wow, look, that's frustrating. This episode of Shop Talk Show is brought to you in part by Notion. That's notion.com/shoptalk. Today I'm excited to share that they just launched Notion Projects, which includes new powerful ways to manage projects and leverage the power of their built-in AI features too. Notion Projects combines project management with your docs, knowledge base, and AI, so you can stop jumping between tools and stop paying too much for them too. You know, over at CodePen we use Notion for a lot of project management stuff. It's really cool. For example, there's lots of stuff we use it for, but for project management specifically, there's one big database and there's individual projects in that database. Just as a way to break things up into logical chunks of like this is a big project we're working on. Within those projects, there are tasks, you know, and tasks are great. That's the meat and potatoes, I feel like. You can have people assigned to them. You can have estimates of how long they're going to take. You can even have another field that's like, how long did it actually take when you close it? And all kinds of metadata that you might need. And that's kind of cool because then built into Notion is like progress bars and stuff to show how far along a project can go. And then new as part of the project is this timeline view. So this, you know, we got this all set up and going at CodePen. Now it's great. We can see who's on what tasks and what's coming up and what's blocked by other stuff. And then arrows and stuff. Notion has really made project management stuff really good. So I appreciate that. It's really kind of the perfect tool for it, in my opinion. So do your most efficient work with Notion projects. You can try it for free today at notion.com/shoptalk. That's all lowercase letters. Notion.com/shoptalk. When you use our link, you're supporting our show. Go right now to notion.com/shoptalk. Well, maybe we can, do you want to do some of these survey, you know, because the data's in here, and that's why you listen to this show, people. We get the data first. You know, that's why you tune into Shop Talk. I'm looking at the responses from the survey, and lots of fascinating stuff here. Of course, it starts with a bunch of demographic stuff. It's important to look at because, you know, you want to make sure that whatever. I don't think we'll spend time on that. Just we're trying to geek out on CSS features specifically. So But one of the most interesting things you get to quickly is like and a lot of the survey seems based around this kind of like, have you heard of it? Have you used it? And the difference between those, because there's a big section of, for example, you just haven't even heard of it. And there's some of the things in here that people haven't heard of at all. Like, for example, trigonometry in CSS. That one had a big gap of people that are just like, what are you even talking about? Which I found kind of interesting. And then there's ones that lots of people have heard of it and used it. This looks like a big winner in the survey was something like Gap and Flexbox and Grid. Loads of people know about it and have used it, so that's like a big CSS success, I guess. And rightfully so too. Gap is pretty huge.
Were there any surprises for you, like features that people are using and not using?
I didn't think anything was like particularly outlier, but like as you were chatting earlier, I feel like I'm quite comforted by the fact that like for the really newer ones, there's a larger chunk of people, like some of them where you can see 1 year to year. It seems like there are more people, like there's an increase. There's an increase to know about it and have used it, which, especially the have used it part, I'm like, oh, does this mean that people are more willing to give the new features a try because they're expecting that, oh yeah, the browser will catch up real soon? As opposed to, there's the sentiment like years back where like, no, I can't use it. It takes like, I can't use something new. I can't use Flexbox. Like the browsers don't support it properly. Like, and even after like 97% browsers supported it, some people still threw that line out because it's not easy to change your mindset. So that I thought that was good. The other thing about CSS, and I had this discussion with some other folks before, is that there are some CSS that are more universal than others, right? Like, for example, there's some CSS where, like, if you don't have an use case, you're not gonna use it. So personally, I'm like, usage, like, depending on the CSS, usage isn't like the only thing. I think know about it is actually pretty, it's a pretty good, like, they should be in combination. Because my take on CSS even is like, there's 500, like you don't have to stress yourself. Like there's so much to learn about web development. Like don't stress yourself over 500 fields of property. Knowing that something exists, honestly good enough. If and when you run into a project that you need a specific thing, you're like, oh, I heard this thing, I wonder if it does it. Then you go learn about it and use it. But like having up to know about it knowledge, to me, I personally think that's good. I don't know what other people do, but I think that's good.
It's almost like there's one in between that you could never ask on a survey like this, but I want to know, which is the like, do you have mental muscle memory for it yet? It's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to automatically reach for it. Even if you don't use it maybe at work or whatever, that you're ready to do it. Like even things like container queries, I think that has a lot pretty good awareness. That's an interesting one. It's been jumped up. As far as usage, it looks like it went from about 5% in 2021 to 12%, doubled to 12% in 2022, and then more than doubled again this year to 26%. The 26% for usage is not that high, but it's a trend of doubling. So I think we could expect 50% next year, which is incredible. All these charts, notably all of usage and awareness, they go up and to the right.
Yeah.
There's nothing that drops. And there's one drop in awareness.
There's one.
4 CSS comparison functions took a drop in 1 year.
There's another one that actually dropped its content visibility, but I don't think that's too large of an issue because even there's been some web.dev. There was a web.dev article like if you don't know how to use it properly, please don't. Because that one has to do with like performance and like it's almost a little bit of a micromanaged property if I can use that phrase correctly. Because like browser defaults are fine, but if you want something like super specific because of your super specific use case, you can't use this one. So it's kind of like a if you don't know what you're doing, please don't. Like it's like operating like please be skilled enough to do this, otherwise you might kill someone. Kind of a situation. So I'm totally fine with that one trending down. I think that's what the browser vendors are hoping, because I think they probably see like, oh no, you're not supposed to do it like that.
Yeah.
Back
Interesting.
to your earlier point, it is interesting to see these newer properties like that start in like 2021 and 2022 have steeper curves. It's almost like the other ones are kind of whatever 30% curve, and these are more like 45 going up. It's pretty cool. So
Yeah, CSS nesting just skyrocketed from being introduced in 2022 with 62% awareness to all of a sudden like 80 something this year, just whoosh, really high up. Yeah, you gotta wish that hopefully people understand they're talking about native CSS nesting and not SAS or something, but who knows.
We tried to be explicit about it, but like, we can, if people don't read it, like, we're like, oh well. But then again, I'm like, I wonder, like, for the newer properties, people are more willing to accept that, like, oh, the browsers were all implemented at the same time. Maybe some of the older ones where people have a bit of a traumatic experience and like, it's just gonna be broken forever. And I think that's understandable. Like, personally, as a user of CSS myself, I'm like, yeah, that one's understandable, because it's like, some browsers just didn't get around to it to a point where like I'm like, I guess that's the norm now. And then it does take, like what you mentioned, Chris, like mental capacity. I think that's such a perfect thing to describe how web developers operate. Is that like there's just so much.
So
And we
I
don't
don't know why I
have
didn't
infinite
go.
mental capacity. So in fact, sometimes I think like asking developers to constantly check what is supported and what is not. I wonder if that's a bit of a asking for mental capacity situation sometimes. Of course, in a world where unicorn ship rainbows, I would love that everyone just actively does it like brushing their teeth, right? But,
do you think the interop project has like impacted this too? Like, maybe we're all, just that browsers are kind of like, hey, we're working on this sort of stuff, these properties, that lets us, or I don't know, encourages us to actually use them.
I do feel that interop is a fantastic project because it's kind of, when the people from the browser side come out and say things, like, people do stop and listen. They go, oh, this is official. And when you say like all the browsers come together
Then don't worry.
saying something, you're like, oh wow, this is big. And I sometimes wonder if it's like, it is a bit of like developer advocacy from the browser side of things, which I really like, where that there's this whole push, like Adam and Leah from the Google side, they have the podcast, and then like web.dev, there are like so many like articles. And when it's published on web.dev, because like kind of, I don't know if endorse is the right word, but it's like it's a bit of an like browser vendors talk about stuff on this platform. So I wonder if that's one of the reasons why like CAD picked up so quickly, because there was a series of coverage on web.dev, and then so many other folks who write about here that talk about web development also like, oh, let's talk about that. Like, look, like the official interop talking about it, let's talk about it too, and then it gained momentum and went. And I like this way of developing. It's like the browsers and like the CSS working group used to operate like so subtly, to the point where nobody knew what was happening. But now I feel like they're starting to talk about it in a more public way. I like it. I love it. I think it's a good part. And that's more
Evangelism works.
for sure. And so I think I'm all for interop, and I love how transparent they are. Like they have come out and said like, well, we're not. When you think Google, you think 20,000 employees, but like, do you know how many people work on browsers? Like, this is not common knowledge, and I always tell people that I meet who are not familiar, I'm like, look, if you put like all the people who build browsers probably all know each other. They probably all fit in a really large elevator. Don't do that, because if that elevator crashes, that's it. It's a risk management problem. That's how small the group is. Like if all don't they should not never ever take the same plane. Like no, they should not be at like protect them. Like because there's not a lot of them.
There is. I always thought it weird how the people who actually write browsers are different people than the like the spec people and developers like us. But the people who write in C++ or whatever it is to actually make that. Like I've never met one. Never once. Like they'd be like, I don't know what to think about that. I just think that's interesting that they're a little separated from the rest of us somehow.
And I know that the folks, like that whole group that's involved, from that C++ engineer to the person who's actually writing the code, boils down to a handful of people involved. They are aware of this, and that's why there's this layer of like evangelism from people who are trying to connect these two groups, like the people who use the CSS.
That's a good idea.
Because the people who write browser are so specialized and they're so good at what they do, but like they're not gonna be writing CSS. You know what I mean? And then those who write CSS are not gonna be writing browsers. And so you kind of need a little bit of a bridge to get. And that's how we're moving. That's the direction we're going in, and big plus, like all for it.
There's a pretty weak usage of wide gamut colors, people. I'd say please get on that one. That's a little missed opportunity for y'all out there. Very few, little tiny dot on that one.
The other thing I would love, like now that all colors is very, I feel like it's very design side of the spectrum CSS. What I would love is for the developers and the design community to have much better communication. Like I talked about this a bit in the past. Like when I used to work at an ad agency many years ago, like my designers would come and give me fantastical designs, and I was like very savvy at telling how I can do it. But like after Grid came out, like CSS Shape, that's that one for me. I wish it was more support. But these are properties that I wish that developers would actively talk to their designers like, hey, remember that thing that I told you I couldn't do? Well, you can do it now. Similar to how like browsers are saying like, oh, we can't do this, and now we can. I feel like this conversation also happens between developers and designers. Because if designers know that these things are possible, they're going to design these things, like the colors thing, right? The white gamut colors. Like, you can use these colors now, like, put them in the web design so that, like, the developer, can go implement them.
Please don't drop that on your crappy computer and ruin my high.
Right? And I'm like, we do have an awareness problem. Like, awareness and communication problem between different groups. Because it's not like it used to be in the past where like when you were a webmaster, you did the design, did the development, you did the DevOps, you executed into your server, and you're like, wow, you are a webmaster. Like it's so specialized now, but like we're not communicating enough. Like we're not taking full advantage of the capability. And I feel like we need to do better in that regard.
Awesome.
It's happening. Well, more evangelism. If we move on a little bit, there's interesting, this reading list part of the feature of people that added thing to their reading list. It's topping the charts, it's extra positioning. I'm glad that made the chart this year. It does have one very early implementation, I think, right? So I guess that was probably the criteria of making it on this list in general. I like seeing that because it's so obviously useful. It's one of those things like, put this thing by this other thing. Yeah, people need to do that when they're making websites. Pretty common thing. So a massive amount of interest in that, and now provably so via the survey.
Yeah, and I feel like surveys like this one, and I'm sure that there are like some other means of like gathering developer feedback. I know that like the people who do browsers do keep an eye on these things. They're like, oh, people want that, huh? Because like, everyone wants everything. They need to prioritize. Like I mentioned, the browser teams are really small. Okay, it's a risk management problem, but they do have to prioritize. Or like, so it's a feedback loop, right? Because like, if people want this but they don't talk about it, or if the browsers put out a feature but nobody uses it because it's so new, then browsers kind of think, oh, maybe nobody wants it. well then fine, we'll go work on something else. So it's kind of like we need to be more active with the feedback as users, because I feel like overall, yeah, there are a couple people who are pretty active, but like the general developer is pretty active.
I lost the ball there.
My day job, I do it, and then I call it a day. But I feel like if there's some feature that like really bugs you, and I wish this was here, it's messing, like it's impacting my work. Just you don't even have to write a long ass blog post about it. So like just mention it.
Just a medium ass plug.
Yeah.
I see the content visibility chart here mentioning it's really every year less people have heard about content visibility. Every year, much fewer people have heard of it. Oh, that's an amazing one. Sorry, that's all I got. Go ahead.
Well, so one thing I wanted to, like, it's cool to see like CSS usage except for that one property is like, but like what's interesting is, and not to dunk on anyone or anything, any project, but CSS framework usage is sort of like interest is sort of trending downward, you know, and over time. And same with CSS in JS, the interest is kind of trending downward. Did you see that same thing I'm seeing?
I did notice that, and but like I feel I personally work happy about it, and then I think about it, I'm like, even I feel like, you know, you still, there is a place for frameworks, like they need to exist, they need help. But what I felt good about when I saw like the framework usage, or even like the CSS in JS, was like the one that helped very strongly is CSS modules, and that's the one where you write actual CSS. And I don't know, I'm very heartened by that. I'm like, even if people have to write CSS in JS, they're doing it like with just CSS syntax. I think that's great.
Yeah, good point. No, it's yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I should say, like, usage, like, for Tailwind, it's like hitting 50% usage. Bootstrap is going down from like 86.9 to 80%. So, like, going down a bit, but that interest kind of metric was interesting, just that people are kind of, and I wonder if that's, again, speaking to the capabilities of CSS. I mean, grid plus a handful of properties gets you so dang far these days. And maybe you don't need a whole, I don't know, style system. So.
And yeah, and I feel in an ideal situation, I would like for like these style systems to be for that specific use case. Like my use case, like I really need this to help me do it. And so there'll always be a usage number there, but it's not like the default. The default goes back to, well, let's just do CSS, and then and then you say, this project, I need this thing, then only we added it. Because like I feel like there was at some point, and this is CSS heavy discussion, but like for some JavaScript project, like it's almost instinctive for some people to like, I'll start off my project with the framework. And of course, again, it depends on the nature of what thing you're building, but like, if you're just building a website, don't try the framework first. Like, you can always, like if you start out like, oh, I'm gonna build an e-commerce app, like yeah, go use the framework. Nobody's asking you to do that vanilla. But again, depending on the project, right? I feel like you can consider, rather than by default, like not thinking too much, like I'll just, you know, create X app.
Yeah. I'm in such a weird spot in my career where it sounds harder to me to learn a framework. I'm like, that sounds hard. I'm just going to write the properties. It just has a background and some border radius, right? Jeez. I can't learn your new abstraction. It's too weird for me.
Yeah, it is a level of abstraction. So I feel like I hope that like all developers have this like growth cycle where they start off and then they're like discover frameworks and they start using it because it makes their life easier, and then they get to a point where like I can write this better than a framework, and then it goes back down again. Yeah, I feel like